Lieutenant Jiwon pressed his back against the cold stone wall, trying to stay hidden in the shadows. The massive crowd below him chanted in their alien language, voices rising and falling like ocean waves. He wasn't supposed to be here. Earth. Command had sent him to observe from orbit, not sneak onto the planet's surface. But something about this execution felt wrong. The Zephyrian capital city stretched out before him, all silver towers and floating platforms. These aliens looked almost human, except for their pale blue skin and the strange markings that glowed on their foreheads. Every Zephyrian in the crowd had the same dim white glow, like tiny flashlights under their skin. All except one. In the center of the execution square, a young female knelt on the platform. Her hands were bound behind her back with energy shackles that sparked blue whenever she moved. What made Jiwon's breath catch was the marking on her forehead. Instead of the usual white glow, hers pulsed with deep purple light. It was beautiful and somehow alive, changing patterns like a kaleidoscope. The crowd's chanting grew louder. Jiwon touched the translator device in his ear, waiting for the words to make sense. When they did, his blood ran cold. "Death to the mind poison," they screamed. "Cleanse the neural corruption." The female alien, who couldn't be more than 20 in human years, kept her head high despite everything. Jiwon had seen soldiers face death with less courage. Her name, according to his briefing files, was Nara. Her crime was having empathic abilities that let her feel other people's emotions. On her world, this was considered a mental disease that could spread to others. 3 tall figures in black robes stood around a massive crystal that hummed with deadly energy. These were the neural purifiers, the judges who decided who lived and died based on the color of their forehead markings. They raised their hands and the crystal's humming grew louder. Jiwon's training kicked in. First contact protocols were clear. Never interfere with alien justice systems. Never reveal human presence without authorization. Never risk diplomatic relations for individual lives. He repeated these rules in his head, but his feet wouldn't move away from the scene below. The lead purifier began speaking in a voice that echoed off the buildings. The translator in Jiwon's ear worked overtime to keep up. "This female carries the mind poison that destroyed our ancestors. Her empathic corruption must be burned away before it spreads to pure minds. Let her death protect our neural hierarchy." Nara finally looked up, and even from his hiding spot, Jiwon could see her eyes. They weren't the cold, emotionless eyes he'd seen on other Zephyrians. They were warm, scared, but still defiant. She was nothing like the monsters his briefing files described. The crystal began to glow brighter. Energy crackled between its surfaces, building toward the killing beam that would fry Nara's brain in seconds. The crowd's chanting reached a fever pitch. Some aliens threw stones at the platform, screaming about genetic purity and neural cleansing. Jiwon's hand moved to the weapon on his belt. His heart pounded so hard, he thought the aliens might hear it. Every instinct told him to run back to his ship and file his report. But looking at Nara's face, seeing her quiet dignity in the face of death, he knew he couldn't walk away. The crystal reached full power. The purifiers stepped back as deadly energy swirled inside the weapon. In 10 seconds, maybe less, it would fire. That's when Lieutenant Jiwon made the decision that would change everything. Jiwon's fingers flew over the small device strapped to his wrist. The human cloaking field shimmered around him like heat waves, bending light to make him nearly invisible. He had maybe 30 seconds before the execution crystal fired. His heart hammered against his ribs as he sprinted down the stone steps toward the platform. The crowd was so focused on the coming death that nobody noticed the shimmer moving through their ranks. Jiwon pushed past blue-skinned aliens who reeked of some chemical they used instead of soap. Their excited chatter filled his ears through the translator, all of them eager to watch someone die for being different. 20 seconds. The crystal's hum grew so loud it made his teeth ache. Jiwon reached the platform's edge and pulled out a small silver sphere from his belt, human engineering at its finest. He pressed the activation button and rolled it toward the base of the execution crystal. The device looked harmless, like a child's toy ball. 15 seconds. The lead purifier raised his arms, ready to give the final command. 10 seconds. Jiwon's little sphere reached the crystal's base and attached itself with a soft click. 5 seconds. The sphere exploded in a shower of sparks and electromagnetic pulses, not enough to hurt anyone, but plenty to overload Zephyrian technology. The execution crystal flickered, sparked, and died with a sound like breaking glass. Emergency alarms started wailing across the city in the chaos that followed, with purifiers, shouting orders and guards running in all directions. Nobody saw the invisible figure leap onto the platform. Ji-won's hands found Nara's energy shackles and attached a small human device that made them dissolve like sugar in water. "Don't fight me," he whispered in her ear, hoping his translator worked both ways. "I'm getting you out of here." Nara's purple-marked forehead turned toward him, her eyes wide with shock. She could sense his presence even though she couldn't see him. Her empathic abilities must have been incredibly strong. "Who are you?" she gasped in broken galactic common, the trade language most species used for communication. "Someone who thinks execution for being different is wrong," Ji-won replied, wrapping his arm around her waist. "Hold on tight." He activated his emergency beacon, and within seconds his ship's transporter locked onto their position. The world dissolved around them in a swirl of blue light. They materialized in the cramped cargo bay of the Soul's Pride, Ji-won's one-man scout vessel. Nara collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed by the sudden change. Her purple markings pulsed rapidly, probably from stress and confusion. "Computer, emergency departure," Ji-won shouted, running for the pilot's seat. "Maximum speed, any direction, away from the planet." The ship's engines roared to life. Through the view screen, Ji-won could see Zephyrian patrol craft launching from the surface, their sleek forms cutting through the atmosphere like silver arrows. They were fast, but human technology had a few advantages. "Sir," the ship's artificial intelligence announced in its calm female voice, "I'm detecting 12 pursuit vessels. They will intercept us in approximately 4 minutes. Ji-won's hands danced over the controls, pushing every system to its limits. "Not if I can help it." Behind him, Nara struggled to stand, using the wall for support. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why did you save me? I am mind poison. I am corruption. My people were right to cleanse me." The words hit Ji-won like a physical blow. This young woman actually believed she deserved to die. "No," he said firmly, not taking his eyes off the pursuing ships. "You're not poison. You're just different. And where I come from, being different isn't a crime." Nara stared at him with those warm, confused eyes, trying to understand a concept that didn't exist in her world. 3 days had passed since the escape, and Nara still jumped at every sound. She sat curled up in the corner of the small medical bay, watching Hyunji organize supplies with fascination. The human medic moved with such casual confidence, her hands steady, as she sorted through bottles and devices that would have been restricted to only the highest caste on Velthara. "Your heart rate is still too high," Hyunji said gently, glancing at the scanner beside Nara's bed. "Are you having nightmares again?" Nara nodded slowly. The purple markings on her forehead had dimmed since the rescue, no longer pulsing with that vibrant light. "I dream of the crystal, the sound it made before it died. Sometimes I dream it worked, and I am dead." Hyunji sat down across from her, close enough to offer comfort, but far enough to avoid triggering Nara's empathic abilities. The human had learned quickly that Nara could feel emotions from anyone who got too close, and strong feelings made her physically sick. "You're safe now," Hyunji said. "Lieutenant Ji-won made sure of that. We're 3-star systems away from your world." "But why?" Nara asked, the same question she'd been asking for days. "I am damaged goods. My empathic corruption makes me unfit for society. Your friend risked his life and his career for broken merchandise." Hyunji's face scrunched up in confusion. "Broken merchandise? Nara, you're not a thing to be bought and sold. You're a person, and there's nothing broken about you." This was the part that confused Nara most. On Velthara, everyone had their place in the neural hierarchy. Those with white markings were workers. Those with silver markings were leaders. Those with gold markings were the ruling class. But purple markings meant genetic corruption, mental disease that could spread to others if not eliminated. On my world, the empathic ability is proof of neural degradation, Nara explained slowly, trying to help Hyunji understand. It shows our ancestors were polluted by inferior genetic material. We feel what others feel, and this makes us weak. We cannot make logical decisions when we are overwhelmed by emotions that do not belong to us. Hyunji shook her head. That's not how we see it at all. On Earth, empathy is considered a gift. People who can understand and feel what others are going through make the best doctors, teachers, and leaders. We try to teach empathy to everyone, not eliminate it. The concept was so alien to Nara that she felt dizzy trying to process it. You encourage the mind poison? We encourage understanding, Hyunji corrected. The ability to feel what someone else feels helps prevent cruelty and suffering. It makes people kinder, more compassionate. How can that be poison? Before Nara could answer, the medical bay door slid open. Lieutenant Ji-won stepped inside, carrying a data pad and looking uncomfortable. He'd been avoiding her since the rescue, only checking in once a day to make sure she was healing properly. How is she doing? He asked Hyunji, but his eyes kept drifting to Nara. Physically, she's fine, Hyunji replied. Emotionally, she's still struggling with the idea that she might actually be worth saving. Ji-won finally looked directly at Nara. You mentioned yesterday that you could sense the guards' intentions before they moved during your escape. How exactly does that work? Nara hesitated. On Velthara, discussing empathic abilities was forbidden, but these humans seemed genuinely curious rather than disgusted. I feel their emotions like colors in my mind. Fear is yellow and sharp, anger is red and hot, determination is blue and steady. When the guards were about to act, their emotional colors changed first, before their bodies moved. Instead of recoiling in horror, Ji-won leaned forward with interest. That's incredible. You could sense their intentions before they even knew they were going to act on them. It is not incredible, Nara said quietly. It is corruption. It makes me unpredictable and dangerous. No, Ji-won said firmly. It makes you valuable. That kind of intuitive understanding could save lives, prevent conflicts, help people communicate better. Your world threw away something precious. Nara stared at him, her purple markings beginning to pulse again for the first time in days. These humans were treating her gift like it was actually a gift, not a curse to be eliminated. The mining station Kepler 7 hung in space like a rusty metal spider, its long arms stretching out to collect asteroids for processing. Ji-won guided the soul's pride toward the docking bay, trying to ignore how nervous Nara looked in the co-pilot's seat beside him. It's just a routine supply stop, he said gently. We need food, fuel, and some replacement parts. Nothing dangerous. Nara gripped the armrests of her chair, her purple markings flickering with anxiety. There are so many mines in that station. I can feel them from here, all jumbled together like voices shouting at once. Over the past week, Ji-won had learned that Nara's empathic range was much stronger than she'd initially let on. She could sense emotions from nearly a kilometer away when she wasn't trying to block them out. On Velthara, they'd given her drugs to suppress this ability. Without those chemicals in her system, her natural gifts were returning full force. Try the focusing technique Hyunji taught you, Ji-won suggested. Imagine building a wall around your mind, letting in only what you choose to feel. Nara closed her eyes and took deep breaths. Slowly, her death grip on the chair relaxed. Better. I can still sense them, but it's like turning down the volume on a radio. The docking process went smoothly, and soon they were walking through the station's main corridor. Kepler 7 wasn't much to look at, just functional metal hallways, flickering lights, and the constant sound of mining equipment in the background. The people were a mix of humans and other species, all looking tired, and covered in asteroid dust. Supply depot is this way, Ji-won said, leading them down a side corridor toward the commercial section. That's when Nara suddenly grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with terror. Stop! Don't go any further. What's wrong? Ji-won asked immediately. Alert. He'd learned to trust her instincts over the past few days. Someone in that room ahead, Nara whispered, pointing toward the supply depot entrance. Their emotions are all wrong. They're excited about something terrible. They want to hurt people, and they're hiding something. Ji-won pulled out his scanner and swept the area ahead of them. At first, It showed nothing unusual, but when he adjusted the settings for explosive materials, it started beeping frantically. There was definitely something dangerous hidden near the depot entrance. "Computer," he said into his communicator. "Alert station security. Possible explosive device at supply. Depot 7. Within minutes, the area was swarming with security officers. They found the bomb exactly where Nara had sensed the dangerous emotions. A crude but effective device hidden behind a ventilation grate, set to trigger when someone walked through the depot doorway. The station chief, a gruff human woman named Captain Torres, shook Jiwon's hand gratefully. "Your warning saved at least 30 lives. How did you know?" Jiwon glanced at Nara, who was trying to make herself invisible behind him. "My partner has excellent instincts." Later, back on their ship, Nara sat quietly in the common area while Hyunji prepared dinner. She seemed lost in thought, staring out the viewport at the stars. "You saved a lot of people today," Jiwon said, sitting down across from her. "How does that feel?" Nara looked confused by the question. "How does it feel? I don't understand." "On your world, you were told your abilities were poison, right? But today you use those same abilities to prevent innocent people from being killed. Doesn't that change how you think about yourself?" For a long moment, Nara was quiet. Then she said, "On Velthara, I was never asked how I felt about anything. The purifiers decided what was right and wrong. They told me what to think, what to believe, even what emotions were acceptable to have." "And now?" Jiwon prompted gently. "Now you ask me questions like my opinion matters. You let me choose whether to help or not help. You treat my feelings like they're important." Her purple markings began to glow more brightly. "Is this what you call personal freedom?" Jiwon smiled. "That's exactly what we call it. The right to make your own choices, think your own thoughts, and decide for yourself what kind of person you want to be." Nara was quiet for another moment, then asked, "What if I choose to use my abilities to help people instead of hiding them?" Then, "You'd make an excellent member of our crew," Jiwon replied. "If you want to stay, that is." For the first time since her rescue, Nara smiled. The engine room hummed with quiet efficiency as Minho explained the power coupling system to Nara for the third time. The young engineer had endless patience, probably because he was genuinely fascinated by how quickly she learned. "So this conduit carries energy from the fusion reactor to the navigation systems," Nara said, pointing to a glowing tube that ran along the wall. "But why does it pulse in that rhythm?" Minho grinned. "You're the first person to notice that. The pulse matches the ship's computer heartbeat. It helps synchronize all the systems so they work together smoothly." Nara nodded, her purple markings glowing softly as she concentrated. "On Zephyrian ships, we use biological neural networks instead of computers. The ship literally thinks and feels like a living creature." "That's incredible," Minho said, pulling up a holographic display. "Could you show me how that works, even theoretically?" What followed was 2 hours of the most productive technical exchange Minho had ever experienced. Nara's empathic abilities let her understand the emotional resonance of different technologies, while her people's bioengineering knowledge complemented human mechanical expertise perfectly. "Your fusion reactor feels angry," Nara said suddenly, tilting her head like she was listening to something. "Not dangerous angry, but frustrated, like it wants to run more efficiently, but something is holding it back." Minho ran a diagnostic and found she was right. The plasma containment field had a microfracture that was reducing efficiency by 12%. It wasn't dangerous yet, but it would have become a problem within the week. "How did you sense that?" he asked, amazed. "Everything has an emotional signature," Nara explained. "Machines, plants, even rocks. They all have a kind of feeling to them. Your reactor feels like it's straining against limitations." In return, Nara taught Minho about Zephyrian healing crystals that could accelerate cellular repair. She showed him how to attune the crystals to different biological frequencies, a process that required both technical knowledge and empathic sensitivity. "Your people could revolutionize medicine with this," Minho said, watching a small cut on his hand heal in minutes after Nara applied the crystal treatment. "My people would rather die than learn from aliens," Nara replied sadly. "They believe contact with other species causes genetic corruption." Their conversation was interrupted when Ji-won entered the engine room, his face grim. "Nara, we need to talk." She followed him to his quarters, immediately sensing his emotional turmoil. Fear, anger, and something else she was learning to recognize. As protective instinct all swirled around him like a storm. "Alliance Command sent a message," Ji-won said, handing her a datapad. "The Zephyrian government has formally requested your return. They're claiming I kidnapped a dangerous criminal." Nara read the official document, her markings dimming with each line. "They want to make an example of me. Execute me publicly to show what happens when someone tries to escape neural purification." "That's not going to happen," Ji-won said firmly, "but Command is pressuring me to hand you over. They say keeping you creates diplomatic problems with the Zephyrian Empire." Nara sat down heavily on his bunk. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I should go back. I've caused you enough trouble already." "No," Ji-won said, sitting beside her. "You're not trouble. You're the best thing that's happened to this crew in years. Minho's learned more about bioengineering in the past month than he did in 4 years of academy training. Yunji says your healing techniques could save thousands of lives. And you've saved us multiple times with your empathic warnings. But what about your career, your future?" Nara asked. "I can feel how much being a space pilot means to you. It's part of who you are." Ji-won was quiet for a moment, then said, "A career isn't worth much if you have to sacrifice your principles to keep it. Besides, I've been thinking about leaving Alliance service anyway. Too many rules about not helping people who need it." Nara looked at him with surprise. She could sense he was telling the truth, but there was something else in his emotions, something warm and protective that made her heart beat faster. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked softly. "It's not just about principles, is it?" Ji-won met her eyes, and for the first time since her rescue, he let his professional mask slip completely. "Because somewhere along the way keeping you safe stopped being a mission and started being personal. Because when I look at you, I see someone worth fighting for." The admission hung in the air between them, changing everything. The alarm that woke Ji-won at 400 hours wasn't the gentle chime that usually signaled routine system checks. This was the harsh, urgent wail that meant immediate danger. He rolled out of his bunk and grabbed his uniform, his mind already racing through possibilities. "Computer. Report," he called out while pulling on his boots. "3 vessels approaching at high speed," the AI replied in its calm voice that somehow made everything sound worse. "Configuration matches Zephyrian Purifier-class warships. ETA to intercept. 14 minutes. Ji-won's blood turned to ice. He sprinted to the bridge where Nara was already waiting. She stood at the viewport, staring out at the asteroid field of Tau Ceti, her purple markings pulsing rapidly with fear. "They found us," she whispered. "I can feel him from here. The hunter they sent. His mind is like a steel trap, cold and empty except for one thing. He wants me dead more than he wants to breathe." "How many ships?" Ji-won asked, sliding into the pilot's seat and bringing up the tactical display. 3 vessels, Minho reported, from the engineering station, but only one mind that matters. The others are just soldiers following orders. The hunter commands them. Through the view screen, 3 sleek ships emerged from behind a massive asteroid. They moved with predatory grace, their dark hulls almost invisible against the black of space except for the pulsing red lights that marked them as purifier vessels. A communication signal crackled through the speakers, and a voice spoke in heavily accented galactic common. "Human vessel Soul's Pride. This is Purifier Veltash of the Zephyrian Neural Cleansing Authority. You are harboring stolen property of the Zephyrian Empire." Ji-won activated the comm system. "This is Lieutenant Ji-won of the Earth Alliance. I don't know what you're talking about. Do not insult my intelligence, human. The genetic aberrant known as Nara of the corrupted bloodline is aboard your vessel. Her continued existence threatens the stability of our entire social order. Return her immediately, and your crew will be permitted to leave unharmed." Nara moved, closer to Ji-won, her hands trembling. Through their growing connection, he could feel her terror but also her resolve. "Don't let him take me alive," she whispered. "Promise me that." "I'm not promising anything like that," Ji-won replied firmly. Then to the comm he said, "Purifier Veltash, the person you're referring to requested asylum under Alliance protection protocols. She's a free individual, not property. The laugh that came through the speakers was like breaking glass. Free individual. She is a walking plague, human. Her empathic corruption spreads like a virus. Already I detect 3 other crew members aboard your ship, showing signs of neural contamination from prolonged exposure to her influence. Ji-won looked around the bridge. Minho and Hyunji had joined them, both looking defiant rather than afraid. If Veltash thought they were contaminated, he was wrong about the cause. They weren't changing because of some alien disease. They were changing because they'd found something worth fighting for. Your 14-day pursuit across 3 star systems. Ends here, Veltash continued. I have never failed to retrieve a genetic aberrant, and I will not begin now. You have 2 minutes to transfer the corrupted female to my custody, or I will take her by force. Sir, Minho called out from his station, their weapons are powering up. Those ships pack enough firepower to vaporize us 3 times over. Ji-won studied the tactical display, looking for options. The Soul's Pride was fast and maneuverable, but she was built for exploration, not combat. Against 3 Purifier warships, they didn't stand a chance in a straight fight. There's something else, Nara said quietly. Veltash isn't just a hunter. He's had his emotional centers surgically removed. That's why I can barely sense him. He feels nothing. No mercy, no doubt, no hesitation. He's the perfect weapon for hunting people like me. 1 minute remaining, Veltash announced. I suggest you use it wisely. Ji-won looked at his crew, these people who had become his family over the years. Then he looked at Nara, whose courage in the face of certain death reminded him why he'd joined the alliance in the first place, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Hyunji, secure all loose items for emergency maneuvers, he ordered. Minho, I need everything the engines can give us. And Nara? She looked at him with those warm, frightened eyes. Hold on tight. We're not giving up without a fight. The first energy blast rocked the Soul's Pride so hard that Hyunji was thrown from her station. Emergency lights bathed the bridge in red as sparks flew from damaged control panels. Ji-won fought to keep the ship steady, while asteroids tumbled around them like deadly confetti. That was a warning shot. Veltash's voice crackled through the damaged speakers. The next one will disable your engines. You have 30 seconds to comply. Minho's hands flew over his engineering console, trying to reroute power around the damaged systems. Sir, our shields are down to 60% from that one hit. If they target our engines, we're dead in space. Ji-won pulled the ship into a tight spiral around a massive asteroid, using it as cover. The Soul's Pride groaned under the stress, but she held together. For now. There has to be another way, Hyunji said, pulling herself back to her feet and checking the medical scanners. We can't outrun them, and we can't outfight them. Yes, there is, Nara said quietly from her position at the viewport. Everyone turned to look at her, surprised by the calm certainty in her voice. I can reach them. Reach who? Ji-won asked, even as he fired the ship's small defensive weapons at one of the pursuing Purifier vessels. The shots bounced harmlessly. Off their shields, the crews of those ships, Nara explained, her purple markings beginning to glow brighter. Veltash may have had his emotions surgically removed, but his soldiers haven't. They're still Zephyrian, which means they still have feelings buried deep inside, feelings their society has taught them to suppress and ignore. Another blast shook the ship. This time the lights flickered and stayed dim. They were running out of time and options. What are you suggesting? Ji-won asked, though part of him already knew and dreaded the answer. I can project emotions across space, Nara said. Not just sense them, but share them. If I can reach the minds of Veltash's crew and show them what they're missing, what their rigid system has stolen from them, maybe they'll refuse to follow his orders. That's suicide, Hyunji protested. You told us yourself that projecting emotions over long distances nearly killed empaths on your world. That's why it was forbidden. The reason it was forbidden, Nara corrected, is because it worked. The Purifiers were terrified that empaths could awaken the emotions they've spent centuries suppressing in their people. A third blast hit them, and this time something important broke. The ship's artificial gravity flickered, sending everyone floating for a terrifying moment before it kicked back in. Shields at 30%, Minho reported grimly. One more. Hit like that and we're finished. Jiwon stared at the tactical display, watching the 3 purifier ships closing in like wolves surrounding wounded prey. His crew was looking at him expectantly, waiting for him to find a miracle solution like he always had before. But this time was different. This time, the only way to save everyone might be to let Nara sacrifice herself. "I won't let you do it," he said firmly. "There has to be another way." Nara moved closer to him, her hand touching his shoulder. Through their connection, he could feel her resolve, as solid as steel but warm with compassion. "Jiwon, I've been dead since the day I was born with these markings. My whole life has been borrowed time. But if I can use my death to save you and awaken my people to what they've lost, then maybe it means something." 10 seconds to weapons range, Veltash announced. "Prepare to be boarded." "There's something else," Nara continued urgently. "If this works, if I can reach their suppressed emotions, it won't just affect the crews of these 3 ships. Empathic projection spreads like ripples in water. Every Zephyrian in this star system will feel it. Every suppressed emotion, every buried feeling, every moment of joy and love and compassion they've been denied." Jiwon understood what she was really saying. This wasn't just about escaping Veltash. This was about starting a revolution that could free her entire species from centuries of emotional oppression. "The risk is too high," he said desperately. "You could die." "I could die anyway when they execute me," Nara replied. "But this way, my death might actually save lives instead of just ending one." The purifier ships dropped out of hyperspace directly. In front of them, weapons charged and ready to fire. Nara closed her eyes and placed both hands on the bridge's central console. Her purple markings blazed with light so bright that everyone had to shield their eyes. The air around her seemed to shimmer with invisible energy as she reached out with her mind across the vast emptiness of space. "I can feel them," she whispered, her voice strained with effort. 67 minds across the 3 ships. They're so cold inside, so empty, like people who've never seen color trying to imagine what blue looks like. The first purifier ship fired, but the blast went wide, missing. The souls pried by hundreds of meters. Through the comm system, they could hear confused shouting in the Zephyrian language. "What's happening to them?" Jiwon asked, keeping the ship steady so Nara could maintain her concentration. "I'm showing them memories," Nara replied, sweat beading on her forehead from the strain. "Not my memories, yours. Human memories of what it feels like to care about someone more than yourself." On the tactical display, the neat formation of purifier ships began to break apart. One vessel stopped firing entirely, its crew apparently in chaos. Another ship turned its weapons on its companion, as if the crew couldn't decide who the real enemy was. "Impossible!" Veltash's voice snarled through the speakers. "My crews are immune to empathic corruption. They have been properly conditioned since birth." "Conditioning isn't the same as cutting out someone's heart," Nara said, her markings pulsing, in rhythm with her words. "I'm showing them what Hyunji felt when she first healed a patient, the joy of taking away someone's pain. I'm showing them what Minho felt when he figured out how to make the engines run better, pride in creating something useful and beautiful." More chaos erupted on the purifier ships. Through the view screen, they could see Zephyrian crew members, abandoning their posts, some floating in the corridors as if they'd forgotten how to move, others gathering in small groups and talking animatedly. "And I'm showing them what Jiwon felt when he decided to save me," Nara continued, her voice growing stronger despite the obvious strain. The moment when doing the right thing became more important than following orders. When protecting someone, innocent mattered more than protecting himself. One of the purifier ships suddenly powered down its weapons and began broadcasting on an open channel. A young Zephyrian voice, shaking with newly discovered emotions, said, "This is Gunner Ketva of the vessel cleansing fire. I cannot continue this pursuit. What we are doing is wrong. The female we hunt has committed no crime except being born different." "Traitor!" Veltash screamed. "All crews, report to your loyalty conditioning stations immediately." But it was too late. The emotional awakening was spreading faster than Veltash could control it. Across all 3 ships, Zephyrian crew members were experiencing feelings their society had systematically suppressed. Compassion, doubt, the ability to question authority, and most dangerous of all, empathy for their supposed enemy. "Sir," Minho reported with amazement, Two of the Purifier ships have stopped pursuit. Their crews are... I think they're crying. It was true. Through the enhanced sensors, they could detect the biosignatures of dozens of Zephyrians experiencing emotional overload as years of suppressed feelings crashed over them like a tidal wave. But Veltash's ship kept coming, its weapons still charged and deadly. "You think your mind poison can affect me, aberrant?" Veltash's voice was calm, mechanical, completely devoid of any human warmth. "I have been perfected. All emotional weakness has been surgically removed. I feel nothing but the satisfaction of completing my mission." "That's what makes you the saddest of all," Nara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You've chosen to become less than alive." Veltash's ship moved closer, its massive form blocking out the stars. "Human pilot, I challenge you to single combat. You and me one-on-one. If you win, I will withdraw and allow the aberrant to live. If I win, she dies, and your crew witnesses what happens to those who harbor genetic corruption." "Don't do it," Yunji urged. "It's obviously a trap," but Jiwon was already reaching for his sidearm. "He's going to keep hunting us until one of us is dead. At least this way it ends here." Nara's eyes snapped open, her empathic projection faltering. "No, I won't let you die for me. And I won't let you sacrifice yourself for us," Jiwon replied, firmly. "We're in this together, remember?" The docking bay of Veltash's ship was cold and sterile, lit by harsh white lights that cast sharp shadows on the metal floor. Jiwon stepped through the airlock, his sidearm at his hip, knowing he was probably walking to his death. The Purifier waited in the center of the bay, a tall figure in black armor that made him look more like a machine than a living being. "Yui." "Are smaller than I expected," Veltash said, his voice echoing strangely in the empty space. "Your species is weak, soft. You let emotions guide your decisions. This is why you will fail." Jiwon studied his opponent carefully. Veltash moved like a predator, every gesture precise and calculated. The surgical scars on his temples glowed with a faint blue light, showing where the emotion centers of his brain had been removed and replaced with mechanical implants. "Maybe being soft isn't weakness," Jiwon replied, drawing his weapon. "Maybe it's what makes us strong." The fight began with Veltash moving faster than seemed possible. His enhanced reflexes and cybernetic implants gave him superhuman speed and strength. Jiwon barely managed to dodge the first strike, rolling behind a cargo container as energy blasts scorched the air where he'd been standing. "You cannot hide forever, human," Veltash called out, his voice completely calm even in combat. "I feel no fear, no anger, no doubt. I am the perfect warrior." Jiwon popped up from cover and fired 3 quick shots, but Veltash deflected them with his armored gauntlets. The Purifier advanced steadily, forcing Jiwon to retreat deeper into the bay. "Perfect warrior," Jiwon panted, diving behind another container. "Is that what you call it? Sounds more like perfect victim to me." "Explain," Veltash demanded, genuinely curious despite himself. "You can't feel fear, right?" Jiwon said, edging around the container. "That means you can't recognize when you're in danger. You can't feel anger, so you can't access adrenaline when you need it most. And you can't feel doubt, which means you never question your assumptions." As if to prove his point, Jiwon triggered a small device he'd placed while hiding. The cargo container above Veltash suddenly released its magnetic clamps, sending several tons of mining equipment crashing down. A human would have sensed the danger and moved. Veltash, lacking intuitive fear responses, was caught completely off guard. The Purifier threw up his arms, his enhanced strength stopping the falling debris from crushing him, but the impact drove him to his knees. Jiwon stepped out of cover, his weapon trained on Veltash's head. "You see," Jiwon said, breathing hard, "emotions aren't weaknesses. They're survival tools that evolution gave us for a reason. Fear keeps us alive. Anger gives us strength when we need it. Love gives us something worth fighting for." Veltash looked up at him with those cold, empty eyes. "You will kill me now?" "No," Jiwon said, lowering his weapon, "because unlike you I can feel mercy, and because Nara wouldn't want me to become a killer." The sound of footsteps echoed through the bay as Zephyrian crew members entered, but they weren't coming to rescue their commander. Their faces were wet with tears, their movements uncertain as they struggled with newly awakened emotions. "Commander Veltash," one of them said hesitantly, we cannot continue this mission. The human female's gift has shown us what we have lost. We remember now what it felt like to care about each other, to feel joy and sadness and hope." "You are contaminated," Veltash said flatly. "Report for immediate neural cleansing." "No, sir," the crew member replied, and there was wonder in his voice. "We choose to remain contaminated. We choose to feel." Over the following weeks, the change spread across Zephyrian space like wildfire. Nara's empathic projection had awakened, something that couldn't be put back to sleep. Hidden empaths emerged from shadows where they'd been hiding for years. Ordinary Zephyrians began refusing neural conditioning for their children, the rigid caste system that had dominated their society. For centuries began to crumble as people discovered they could choose their own paths. The revolution wasn't violent. It didn't need to be. When people experienced genuine emotion for the first time, when they felt the warmth of connection and compassion, they simply couldn't go back to the cold emptiness they'd been taught was normal. G1 and Nara found themselves at the center of something much bigger than they'd ever imagined. Earth Alliance Command, initially angry about the diplomatic incident, quickly realized they had stumbled onto the greatest breakthrough in interspecies relations in history. "You've given us something more valuable than any technology," the Zephyrian Provisional Government told them during the first peace talks. "You've given us back our hearts." 6 months later, Jiwon and Nara stood on the observation deck of the new diplomatic station orbiting the Zephyrian homeworld. Below them, cities that had once been cold and efficient now glowed with art and music and laughter. "Do you ever regret it?" Nara asked, her hand in his. "Giving up your military career for this?" Jiwon smiled, watching Zephyrian children play, in parks that had once been forbidden to anyone below the ruling caste. "I didn't give up anything. I found something better. We both did." And in the distance, more ships arrived daily. Humans eager to learn Zephyrian bioengineering, Zephyrians hungry to understand human concepts of freedom and choice. Two species becoming something greater together. The revolution of the heart had only just begun.